I want to get back into our topic on estimating, and today I'm going to cover the various styles or methods of estimating. Hey, it's Dennis. Listen, if you are a foreman looking to improve your skills and boost your income, or a journeyman who wants to promote to the foreman role, you've come to the right place. Today we're going to be talking about some estimating styles, and I'm going to start off with bidding by the square foot. This is a common method for things like carpet or drywall, but it is used in the electrical trade, I think primarily probably on residential projects. I don't really recommend it because there's just too many variables that you might encounter. Although there are successful contractors out there that do residential work, that do bid by the square foot, a certain price, say $3 to $5 per square foot, or even higher for a larger or more custom home. There are people who are successful that way. I think like everything else, it takes a little bit of time to get accustomed to that type of bidding, and it has a lot to do with your gut feeling. When you walk through, having done a bunch of similar projects, you get a sense for where this certain home might land in your price range. I have used square foot pricing on commercial projects, but only for preliminary pricing. So if a company said, hey, we have this concept of, a building, whether it's an office building or retail store, something like that. We have a concept and we're trying to get some budget numbers together so that we can acquire financing. There is a good source for compiling that type of pricing, and we'll take a look at that. But that's really the only time that I recommend pricing by square foot, just to get some preliminary pricing together. And I think when you do that, you should try to shoot a little high, because they're going to acquire financing based on your quote, presumably, and then if you come back and say, oh well, this is going to cost 20 or 30% more than we projected, they're going to fight you on that because the financing won't cover it, right? A very similar type of pricing is in solar work to price projects by the watt. Okay, so depending on how many watts, it could be megawatts or it could be kilowatts, you would assign a cost per watt to the project and multiply it by the size of the project to come up with a budget. This is pretty common on larger projects, EPC projects, where the customer's doing maybe kind of a feasibility study to see if it's practical to build this project before they commit to doing it. And generally negotiations continue on from there. That's just the starting point. And then as they start to develop engineered drawings, pricing might change just a little bit, but again, they're going to, try to hold you to your budget number as close as they can, because that is the budget number that they use to prove that, it was a viable project. So let's take a look at some information on pricing per square foot, let's just say on commercial buildings. This is a Gordian square foot cost book that I have pulled up right here. It uses RS Means data. RS Means is a company that's been around for, I think, probably 75 years or so, that collects construction data as far as material costs and labor costs for different parts of the country. And they offer a database that you can use for estimating. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that because I've already covered it in my free Foreman training class. So if you'd like to get more information on that, and I think you should, just go down into the description, hit the link to my website, and sign up for the free Foreman class, and I'll cover it in there. But this is a book that you can use for developing a square foot cost for different types of projects. And let me switch over to the table of contents real quick. Now, this book isn't cheap. It's about $350, I believe, so it's not something that you want to buy and just have sitting around. But if you are going to be doing any type of preliminary pricing, it's a great resource for that. And like I said, I've used it in the past. This is the table of contents. And when you first use this book, you need to read their instruction on how to use it, because it has pricing for the entire country. And in different parts of the country, labor is a little cheaper in some places, more expensive in others, and material, of course, is the same. So they have multipliers that you can take the material and labor costs that are in the book and multiply them by a certain multiplier to adjust them to the labor and material costs in your given area or your part of the country. But just kind of wanted to introduce you to this to make you aware that it's available to you, and it is a good resource in some circumstances. It's not the type of estimating that I recommend for your project because it just doesn't give you enough detailed information to manage a project. Now, another type of estimating involves bidding by the drop or the hole or the device. And the concept is basically that for each device, you're going to need a box, and you're going to need a device, and you're going to need a wall plate, and a length of, in the case of residential work, some Romex, or in the case of commercial work, possibly some flex with wire in it, some supports, connectors. So you would price one of these assemblies, which would include probably 12 or 15 feet of flex or Romex, since your receptacles per code have to be within 12 feet, I suppose. And then you just count up the number of receptacles, the number of switches, number of lights, and that unit cost would be applied to all of them. And then you'd probably include your home runs and your service in there. So again, I've seen that used in parts of the country. In Los Angeles, when I first started, it was very popular there as a way to estimate homes in small commercial buildings. I think at the time, 40 years ago, residential was like $25 a hole and commercial was $35. I'm sure it's probably double that by now. Again, I guess if you kept, you know, that assembly updated price wise, because prices have been changing a lot recently, you know, it's definitely a step up from bidding by the square foot, but nothing beats a detailed takeoff. So I don't really recommend it for, you know, our end goal, which is to manage our labor on commercial or industrial or solar projects. So doesn't really apply to us, but it is a method that people use successfully, and you know, build a profitable business off of. Now, this is bidding by the hole or bidding by the outlet taken to a whole nother level. This is actually spreadsheet estimating, and it's a very popular method. A lot of companies do this. This is something you would put together on your own, basically price out all of your different installations for labor and material, and then just go through here and select your quantities of how many of each of these you had, and it will tally up and give you a total number for your particular installation, whether it's a house or a commercial building. This particular one is for residential. And it's a good method. Some companies get pretty sophisticated about this. You could even use, you know, purchase a database for building one of these if you wanted to. It's a lot of work to put together a really good one. Some of these will work for our purposes if they're built right. But once you build it, then you have to manage it too, because your pricing on your material fluctuates a lot. Your labor should be pretty constant, but material costs fluctuate all the time, so you constantly have to be adjusting those. And it's, I suppose it's something you could put a percentage on overall, but different materials costs go up at different rates. Like copper is very susceptible to price increases or decreases, large swings. And some of the other things like devices, for example, you know, probably wouldn't have such a huge swing in price. So the best way to do it would be to adjust every piece of material based on current market value, and that's a little difficult to do. So it's a good method and it does work, but it takes a lot of work to put one together and manage it properly. Now, I've also seen this type of system used for solar estimating, and typically that uses a price per watt for different categories, like perhaps your inverters, your modules, you know, your electrical portion of the installation, the racking portion, like that. That would all be broke down. Instead of just charging one price per watt for the entire project, it would be categorized, and each category would have a certain price per watt. Just helps you fine-tune the pricing a little bit, and going into submitting a quote, it's easy to get your pricing on your major components like your inverters and your modules and your racking. So it helps fine-tune that cost. It helps make it, you know, just that much more realistic. But I have seen this type of estimating system used on solar projects. So if your company that you're working for happens to use Spreadsheet Estimating, and you can get your hands on a copy of that spreadsheet, you could possibly use it to build your own detailed estimates with. It just depends on how well they've formatted that spreadsheet system and how detailed it is. It's possible that you could be able to use it. It's possible that they might even be able to just spit you out the report that you need to create your schedules for your project.
Now, this is a good option. This is the Craftsman Bookstore, and their web address is just craftsman-books.com, or I'm sorry, book.com. And this book right here will enable you to do a hand takeoff. So let me scroll down just a little, and you can see there's a preview right here. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to scroll down, and you can see there's a guide here on how to use this book, and it's pretty extensive. It's almost like a estimating course. So they'll tell you how to estimate with their book right here. Let me scroll down just a little bit more. Okay, and you can see that it has pricing for running EMT conduit. This is in-floor slab or multiple runs on a trapeze. This would be concealed in walls and closed ceilings. So if we look at half-inch EMT, I believe this would represent labor unit 1, which would be your lowest labor factor. It's 3.5 hours per C linear feet or 100 linear feet. And then in that information that tells you how to use their book, I'm sure there's a multiplier in there for, more difficult installations. And, again, I cover a lot of this information in my free training course, so I'm not going to go too far in depth there. You can access that with the link below. But a more difficult installation might be a multi-story building where you have to transport material up to higher level floors. Of course, that takes time, so they add a little more time to the labor factor here to cover that time of getting your materials up there, things like that. But this is definitely a good option. You could take it off by hand and put it on a ledger sheet. They talk about that in the instructions. I would be very cautious about using the material costs because materials are so volatile right now and they're going up. But for our purposes, we don't need the material costs. All we need is the labor and the material list. And typically what I do is I'll do a takeoff, I'll compile a master material list, in other words, all the material in the project, and I'll just send it off to a supplier and have them quote it for me. That way I get a detailed breakdown of all the costs of the material, and I don't have to worry about whether the numbers in the book are correct. But let's go back to their website for a second. And I'll show you one more thing here. This book is available in hard copy right here for $97.75. But notice here it also includes software. So I assume that it comes with some type of a spreadsheet estimating program. And so this way you would get your estimate in your your book together. If you buy the online version of the book, then you have to download the estimating software separately, but you can still get it. This may be a good option as far as the software portion. I've never used it, so I can't really speak to that. If you guys wanted me to, I'd be happy to buy a copy of this and go through that software and let you know what I think about it. I don't know how large of a project you could use it on. I used, I believe, this book on that church project. It was the first one that I ever did a takeoff on. It was a fairly decent sized project. It had a large fellowship hall and a 3-story classroom, and I did all of that by hand. The software wasn't an option at the time, or I'm sure I would have done that for $100 even back then. But just wanted you to be aware of this. This is something that might work for you for smaller commercial projects. Like I said, if you want me to do a review of the software, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll buy a copy and review it, and I'll give you my feedback on how large of a project I think you could do with that software and how good it is. And we can even open it up and take a look at it if you want.
Okay, and that brings us to our final solution, which is commercial estimating software. This video is getting a little long. I think I'm going to end it right here. I'm going to start over and make a separate video and devote a little more time to that on the commercial estimating software, because there's a lot of different options available there, and I'd like to show you a variety of those. If you got any benefit out of this, please hit the like, share, comment, and of course subscribe if you want to be notified for when I shoot that next video out, and hit the notification bell. All right, thank you guys, appreciate your lot.